Greetings, I am Solidus-Skully, and welcome back to the final part of the Silent Hill Downpour commentary. Should probably turn that down, but volume's a lot louder than I remember. Maybe my volume is too loud. Anyway, yeah, final part of the Silent Hill Downpour commentary. Lots of, That is honestly shocking. I honestly didn't expect the volume to be that loud. Production aspects, aren't they fun to talk about? But anyway, there's no time to talk about boring things such as this. And now is the part where the Otherworld prison begins to get a little bit exciting, as Leafy starts to run away from his little past. Well, I mean, I say that, but he's coming quite dangerously close to confronting his past, so yeah, we don't exactly need to run away from the swirling vortex of doom anymore. That being said, though, this area can be a bit labyrinthian, because, I mean, I remember having quite a bit of trouble with this in my first playthrough. Again, it's kind of... I wouldn't exactly say it's as bad as Silent Hill Shattered Memories, where you could find yourself getting quite easily lost in some places, but, you know, a lot of the corridors do look a little bit similar, and I think Vatra Games probably could have done a little bit better design-wise in order to subtly inch the player to where they needed to go. Because one of the biggest points of praise to have for the Team Silent era Silent Hill games was just how well they were able to design the game, in which, and especially for Silent Hill 1 and 2, where they designed the game to be open enough for you to know where to go, but at the same time, you know, they subtly pushed you towards where you needed to go with you know, a slight change in camera angle, without necessarily saying, over here, stupid, or, you know, pushing the player to go in that direction. Well, I mean, in some instances, I mean, Silent Hill 2 did have the whole blood trail that you had to follow, because otherwise there'd be no enemies in the game. I don't know, it's strange. And anyway, we also have the return of the Killer Catherine spikes, as I decided to call them now. Why? Because they remind me of the game Catherine. By the way, I don't think I've ever actually been crushed by one of those spikes, so does Murphy get a gory death? I'm not sure, I might have to experiment with that if I'm feeling a little bit more malevolent towards the dude. And if this is the portion I'm thinking of, this also does come up with another certain thing that I want to talk about in regards to Silent Hill Downpour. At least in regards to the endings, because, I mean, I've talked about how, you know, the moral choice system implicates, you know, certain things in the endings, and that is true for the most part. It does sort of influence whether or not Murphy is, you know, a cold psychopath, or if he's, you know, an innocent criminal who was just roped into a bad situation, which, while he did have a certain amount of involvement in, you know, he wasn't entirely to blame for what went down. What I'm talking about, you will see, you know, in the cutscenes that are coming up, but again, in terms of what plays into the best ending of the game, yeah, one of the statuses that needs to happen is that you have to kill as few enemies as possible, which I initially thought was meant to imply that, you know, Murphy couldn't kill any enemies at all. But yeah, as you've probably seen throughout the playthrough, it's only killing as few enemies as you possibly can, and making sure that Murphy does the right thing, essentially, whenever you get to the moral choice aspect. And this is honestly part of the reason why I do recommend playing on hard mode for the game, is because, well, again, as you can probably tell, on easy and normal it is quite easy to end up killing the enemies, whereas if you leave them, you know, more or less just on the ground, but, you know, instead of just desperately breathing for life, that's okay. But, I mean, if you kill them, then you get well, I guess, if you can consider the ending that we're going to be getting at the end of this part the good plus ending, then you get the good ending if you kill enemies but choose all the, you know, right choices in the, you know, little A or B choice with the, you know, morality system. I might not be explaining it very well, but, I don't know. Consider the moral choice system similar to Infamous, really, where you can either choose to have Cole be a bit of a goody two-shoes by pressing the X button, or you can choose him to be a total dick and evil mastermind with it by pressing the circle button. That's pretty much how Silent Hill Downpour handles things, and it's a system which is simple, but, you know, I'm nonplussed about it, because, I mean, for as much as I do respect Silent Hill 2 for being a little bit more subtle in that sort of aspect, you know, in terms of what you do subtly within the game, ultimately influencing, you know, this sort of ending you get, I feel like some of it could have been highlighted a little bit better, because, I mean, without researching, you know, on the internet how to get specific endings, would you really know for certain how you were going to get, say, the Maria ending on your first time through? Or, hell, even the in-water ending, which is believed to be the canon ending of Silent Hill 2, although I personally disagree with that. I don't know. Just some aspects I feel were simplified For decent reason, but again, I can go either or, because, I mean, the subtleties of Silent Hill 2 I think are very much appreciated in terms of game design, but I just dislike the sort of snobby mindset that goes with it. It's like, oh, yes, well, you see, it's subtle, which requires a player to think. Yes, a fine vintage. I'm innocent, I swear I'm innocent. Slice. Yeah, but again, I mean, I say that in jest, but I mean, realistically speaking, I don't think anybody would blame, you know, Murphy or any Silent Hill protagonist for trying to stop monsters that try to attack you, regardless of what Vincent said, which was more or less done to kind of psych Heather out, if you remember back to that one scene in Silent Hill 3 where he says, "They look like monsters to you?" Well, then again, I wouldn't really take what Vincent says seriously anyway, because he's a slimy bitch. By the way, it is not to be understated how amazingly useful the shotgun is, but don't get used to it, because, yeah, certain segments coming up where you're gonna lose all your lovely items, because apparently the game derives horror from, oh look, you've got nothing, so be scared. Ooh, spookiness and Halloween. It is kind of weird that they did kind of put in an arena battle segment for this game. It kind of feels like a relic of the design that they kind of, like, chucked out, you know, with the Monocle Man boss fight. Or perhaps maybe this is just sort of reusing the boss fight concept in a way in which they didn't think players would see. Because, I mean, they did show the Monocle Man boss fight in the E3 trailers, I think. So, well, I mean, I guess that's one way of getting your money's worth. I do kind of wish we did learn a little bit more about the development cycle of Silent Hill Downpour, but there are only really bits and pieces and scraps of information that we can really get, like the fact that this game was once co-op, but was eventually canned, probably due to the negative outlook on that sort of thing. I don't know, it's weird. Learning about game development is fascinating, especially to see how radically games can change in between development cycles. But anyway, the true intricacies of this Otherworld segment won't begin to make themselves apparent until a little bit later, because, I mean, even now you can see a lot of the warp design, which really does give Silent Hill Downpour a lot of artistic beauty, in which a lot of other Silent Hill games weren't really privy to, particularly that of Silent Hill Origins and Homecoming. But yes, now we lose our items, and now we must use QuickTime. Are these QuickTime events? I'm not really sure what to define these as, because QuickTime events are usually just rapid button presses, where these are more kind of more along the lines of, say, like Heavy Rain or Fahrenheit, where you use the controller to do inane actions. And it's not just those games where they appear, and it's in a fair few modern-day video games from the 7th generation onwards. Don't know what to define them as, so I'll just call them mundane time events. I don't know, I've never really failed those either, so I don't know if Murphy just suddenly falls off and dies, or whatever, you know. This I legitimately do think is a pretty cool puzzle. You see those monsters down there? Or if not down there, then in the next room? Yeah, you gotta put them into their cages by doing a nice little spotlight puzzle, which is, again, something I do kind of enjoy. You know, it's using the prison setting to its fullest degree. And as I keep on repeating myself like a broken record player, again, it's not very brain-taxing, but, you know, it has a nice twisted sense of visualization about it, and in that aspect, you know, it does use the setting to its fullest degree, which is something that I can honestly give Silent Hill Downpour, and something that I don't think I really... or something that I don't think I myself and a lot of people don't really give it enough credit for, is that, you know, puzzle design isn't just about, you know, testing them on a cerebral level. It's about using the environment in a way in which is creative, and something that I honestly would have liked to have seen done a little bit more with Silent Hill, to be perfectly honest. Well, I mean, I say I would have liked to have seen it done more with Silent Hill, but then again, there hasn't been a game released since 2013, I think? I mean, 2012 technically, because Silent Hill Downpour was the last in the main series, but I think Book of Memories was 2013. And unless, of course, you count, like, the playable teaser, but then again, that was more of a tech demo than it was really a game, so who knows, really. Well, I mean, unless, of course, you count going into the room multiple times of the part of the puzzle to figure things out, I guess. I don't know. But then again, that wasn't really using the world, that was more so just experience things, the game. Speaking of which, can I just comment about how much I love the art design for the Otherworld prison segment? Like, I mean, not just in terms of puzzles, like, you know, the time-slowing puzzle scene right here, just with all the tubes of blood flowing about. there is actually a major big reason for why you're seeing a lot of this imagery, but again, it's very inspired, and despite the fact that it looks a little bit more stylized, which might lend itself to losing a little bit of its horror zest compared to the usual, you know, soured flesh and grunge that Silent Hill was used in the past, I think it looks great. Especially in aspects like this, and yeah, please avoid those things at all costs, because I'm pretty sure that's an instant kill right there. Well, I mean, unless of course getting turned into Sliced Murphy is not an instant kill, I can't really be certain. There's just a lot of cool visual imagery on display, and I can't help but appreciate it, man. But anyway, the next area that we'll be getting to is, again, continuing the whole theme of the prison scrapyard. Well, once we get after a certain segment that kind of fucked up recording-wise, but you know what? We'll use a little loading transition. Why are you lying? I'm not lying. Shut up, bumhead. But yes, now we get to another puzzle, which is basically an extension of what we were using before, where we use these prison searchlights to keep these prisoners back inside their cages. And again, it's a very interesting little... It actually does kind of go into more of a Sega mentality sort of thing, where you can use these, you know, searchlights to keep them in their cages and, you know, press a button to keep them imprisoned. Or you can just go on your merry way and fight the enemies, which is a very interesting stealth mechanic that... Well, again, I don't exactly see Silent Hill using it, because, I mean, we all know how Silent Hill 3 handled the beef jerky mechanic, but, you know, if Silent Hill was to tackle their puzzles in like a slightly more expansive way with this combined with the likes of Forbidden Siren, I don't know, it could make for some pretty interesting game mechanics that could give you a bunch of alternatives to fighting, which, you know, I think in a survival horror game, especially in a day and age when people are like, well, you see, combat is scary and bad, so, yeah, we can't have you have combat, so you just have to surrender and die like a bitch. You know, give us game mechanics that would actively, you know, make the player appear a little bit more resourceful, despite the fact that, you know, being gung-ho and whatever would lead you to danger. Again, I might sound like a bit of a rambling mess, but I hope you get the idea, and if not, then, well, consider this a rant that I'll probably get into if I ever get around to covering Silent Hill Shattered Memories. Because, believe you me, I have some problems with the design ethos of, oh, well, yeah, horror is... combat with horror is bad. Like, I mean, seriously, I get the idea that if you're completely, you know, dead frozen in panic and fear, you're not exactly going to be punching like an eldritch horror demon in the face, but, I mean, come on, at least let me throw a rock at him or something before I die. I don't know. And speaking of which, I guess this is also probably the closest this gets to traditional Silent Hill rust and blood design. I don't know. I mean, I will give it the game this. It does look very visually distinct compared to Homecoming, which I do rag on the game a little bit too much, but I have my reasons. Let me tell you. But yeah, this is where the difficulty of the puzzle comes in, and something that I'm actually very curious as to why they haven't incorporated... Well, I know why they haven't incorporated it into a future game, because they haven't made one, but yeah, using Silent Hill's degrading, hellish landscape to its advantage, like, I could totally see some game mechanics, you know, involved in a Silent Hill game where things like, you know, your flashlight or some weapons or, you know, not just melee weapons, but also like guns and shotguns, whatever, start to degrade the longer you stay in the other world. I guess, like, maybe maybe sort of a keeping your head above water sort of game mechanic where, again, pitching my idea for a Silent Hill game where you play as somebody whose mental state isn't exactly at the best, but they have to keep on taking drugs in order to maintain their sanity. However, in doing so, taking as many drugs as they do leads to a bad ending, but in order to do so, it maintains sanity of the fog world, which... And again, just give it a really cool sort of mechanic where the longer you stay in Silent Hill, the more things degrade, and, you know... I don't know, I'm not making much sense, so whatever. Just my rambly ideas for a Silent Hill game mechanic that I'm sure some passionate indie developer will probably take on board and go, yes, I will steal them! And then I'll be homeless and then left out on the street as a rambling mess going, he stole every idea I've ever had, oh, McGilliguddy, 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 bada 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 bada. Forgive me, I have had so much Pepsi and I'm now energetic as fuck. But anyway, I should talk about the game. We turn the crank, and soon we shall see our enemy, whoever it may be. My god, this is taking forever. And it doesn't really even open that much. But in we go. I suppose this is also something that I should bring up, I think, presuming something interesting doesn't happen in the next 5 seconds. Which it should. Because I can barely see shit going on right now, which I could have already mentioned beforehand with, you know... the void's back. Well, that's nothing interesting. Yeah, I also plan to... I mentioned last part when I was tackling the side quest that I wasn't going to tackle the painting or shadow science side quest. I now figured out a way in which I can tackle them, which is when I, you know, have the bonus video shortly after this one. Well, I'll record it shortly after this one, but you won't see it until a certain day that will spook the crap out of you. But yeah, you will be seeing the shadow puppets and the, you know, painting side quest as I discuss the alternate endings of Silent Hill Downpour, because I didn't really get a chance to do that in Silent Hill 3 and, you know, the other couple of games that I've tackled. So, yeah. Even though I won't really be talking about them because they're kind of boring as fuck, you'll at least be able to hear me talk about the other endings, which, I am very excited for, because Silent Hill Downpour does have some pretty decent endings, in my personal opinion. Also, I think this is also the last time we end up getting chased by this void, which, yeah, soak it in while you can. It was at least more entertaining than the bloody red void in Silent Hill 3, which is, you know, a red light, because, ooh, spooky. But, alas, this void shall be vanquished, and will appear us no more. Fare thee well, dark void of despair. No longer will your whispers crawl inside our skull. And now, we get to the final boss. The actual final boss, and one with a creature design that I do legitimately think is by far one of the coolest designs in the entire game. But first, we actually have a pretty interesting puzzle, where we must tip the scales of justice by putting in all the pieces of evidence that Murphy collected from the crime scene earlier on. To tip the scales of justice for one of Murphy's supposed crimes, which is a bit of a point of criticism that I probably will discuss once we get to the end credits, but I'll save that for then. Welcome to the final boss. This is the Wheelman. And in terms of creature design, say what you will about Silent Hill Downpour's very uninspired enemy design, this stands up alongside some of the greatest Silent Hill monster designs I've ever seen. I really love the design of the Wheelman, and if you look closely, you actually have seen him stalking Murphy throughout the entire game, from as far back as the Devil's Pit stop, all the way back beginning of the game, he was constantly stalking Murphy. If you saw that, you know, that figure being wheeled across, that's him. Well, albeit a smaller version of him, but... And you also really fight him in an interesting way. Like, I mean, the Wheelman will summon up chunks of debris, you know, in a similar manner to the Megasmith from the Matrix Path of Neo, and he will, well, basically attack Murphy, but... Again, the way in which you defeat the Wheelman is basically by turning off his life support. Now, you might be wondering something here. And, yeah, he does hurt, so, yeah, don't be reckless. But you might be wondering something here in terms of, the Wheelman. We already fought against Pat Napier, Murphy solved all his emotional issues, so why exactly is he fighting him here? Is this a case of the abstract daddy from Silent Hill 2? Well, I mean, we say that, but we didn't really even fight any of the other characters' bosses. Well, I mean, well, I'll get into that in Silent Hill 2, but apparently Eddie did have some planned enemies in the game, but, you know, we never got to see any of those. But, yeah, this mystery is spine-tingly-dingling. Basically just blind him and turn off his life support system, which is morbid as hell, but, again, it's a very nicely psychological way of defeating an enemy, I think. Again, it really does come across as like a very pathetically weak attempt to to show Murphy's last dregs of guilt, which I actually do think is a very nice bit of symbolism, especially, you know, if you choose to follow the belief that Murphy is, for the most part, innocent of what he was, you know, charged with in regards to this part of the story. Which, I mean, on a personal level, I do choose to believe that Murphy was ultimately a good man who was marred by, you know, tragedy and circumstance, but again, was also driven, understandably so, by, you know, what Pat Napier did and the desire for revenge, but ultimately came to realize that it would never solve anything. I don't know, it handled the themes of revenge in a way in which I think was very satisfying, Especially by comparison to Silent Hill 3, which felt very sort of hand-wavy about it, where Heather started to preach towards Claudia about going under and all that sort of thing. I don't know. The theme of revenge in Silent Hill 3, which is actually part of the reason why I did kind of can the Silent Hill 3 Dissected for the time being, is because I kind of wanted to rewrite it, and the more I kind of analysed Silent Hill 3, the more its narrative started to tremble a little bit for me. Not entirely, mind you, but that's something I'll probably get into if I ever finish the Dissected and review the game again. Well, review the game. I didn't even review it the first time. Unless, of course, I did live a previous life, like I have a secret Alessa, that will appear behind me and spawn as a dark fragment of my psyche. Who knows? Maybe I could have died a previous time. What am I rambling about? I have no idea. Jesus Christ. But yeah, that's also something to look out for. You have to wait for him to start breathing, wait for his breathing to lower, and breathe up again. That's a nice way of integrating cool imagery with platforms. The light! And to your left you can see Batman using the bat signal to destroy the Scarecrow in the next room over. Speaking of which, I'm really going to play Arkham Asylum again. Anyway, this should be it. If not, then we have one more to go. And yes, we also have those mundane time events. I don't really know what to call them. The tippy-tappy prompts, not the holdy-woldy. The tippy-tappy and holdy-woldy prompts, I'll call them. Because you see them in like pretty much every fucking game as like dual context-sensitive action where you're pushing or pulling something. Pressing the X button, that's totally equivocal to pushing something. I don't know. I'm saying that mostly in jest. It's either or. Either press a button or push the button multiple times. Whatever increases your involvement in the gameplay, I guess. But anyway, now that he is breathing heavily, you will breathe your last, old man. A monstrous, hellish abomination of a man we once knew, of kindness and of truly heartfelt memories. Fare thee well, old friend. We will finally send you to a better place. Oh no, they're letting all the red cordial spill everywhere. You shall now join the Megasmith in Oblivion. Your red cordial shall vanish, as does your life. Anyway, enjoy the cutscene and I will see you in a bit.
How could you?
What?
He was a good man. A good man!
What the hell are you talking about? That thing tried to kill me. It's not a man, it's a monster. No. No, that's not how it was supposed to go. That's not what I agreed to.
Murphy? Is that you?
Officer Coleridge?
Jeez, I'm glad it's just you. This thing is kicking off something fierce. I knew you'd be smart enough to steer clear of it.
What are you doing here?
Sewell told me to meet him here. You haven't seen him, have you? He ain't answering his radio. Are you okay, Murph? You don't look so good. What's that you got there? What the hell's going on, Murphy?
No. This isn't what I agreed to.
What are you talking about? Agree to what?
Tell him, Murph.
What's going on here, Sewell? Why didn't you answer the radio?
Should've learned to keep your big fucking mouth shut, Frank. Now my friend Murphy's gotta shut it for you.
Murphy, don't do this.
Come on, Murphy, you gonna keep your end of the bargain or not? Do it, you
Murphy.
son of a bitch!
No.
No.
You know, he was a great man, my dad. Didn't matter who you were. Family, friends, even prisoners. He treated everyone with respect. Always looking for the positive side of people. I wanted to be just like him.
You don't understand. Your father treated me like one of his own.
He didn't die right away, you know. After you were done beating the life out of him, he spent years in that wheelchair. A fucking vegetable. Did you know that? And I had to watch this wonderful man shit and piss all over himself, day after day after day. And every time I looked at him, you know what I saw?
Listen to me.
I saw a monster. I saw you.
Just calm down a minute and let me tell you what really happened.
You don't know how many strings I had to pull to get your transfer approved, to get you to my prison. The favors I had to call in, the sick things I had to do to get you under my watch.
You don't have to do this.
My father was a good man. He didn't believe in revenge. But I do.
And now we play as the Bogeyman. But yeah, this is actually a legitimately cool feature of the game, which honestly should kind of be one of an extra modes in Silent Hill games. I mean, who wouldn't love to play as a Pyramid Head, the Bogeyman-ish figure trying to destroy people? Yeah, as you can probably tell by that ending cutscene right there with and the revelations of Frank Coleridge's death and basically everything else. Well, yeah, there's a lot to unpack there, but I don't really have enough time because, well, you can kind of end quite easily here, but honestly, I think I'll save that for the end credits where I'll have a lot of time to talk about it, but yes, now we have the choice to either kill Anne or spare her, because, you know, we're not a monster, we didn't kill Frank Coleridge, so, you know what, we'll spare her, because Murphy is a good boy. And, yes, we need to prove to this angry policewoman that, yeah, we're on the level, we're merciful, and you shall be spared this day, for we are not the Bogeyman. Enjoy the ending, kids.
No. I won't do it.
Yeah, I thought you might say that.
No!
Jesus, you're pathetic. What about Napier? The guy kills your boy. You go through all the trouble of getting yourself locked up with him, and what happens? I serve him to you like a fucking Christmas goose, and you can't even finish the job. No, I gotta go in there and finish the bastard off for you. I ask for one little favor in return.
Murphy? Run!
And this is the thanks I get.
Frank!
Put your hands where I can see them.
You son of a bitch.
I'm not gonna tell you again. Sewell here. We got an officer down. 1000, C block, shower level, over.
You can't do this.
I didn't. Whose prints do you think are on that ship?
10-4, backup's on its way, sit tight.
Roger that. Should have just kept your end of the deal, Murph. Cop killers don't last too long in here.
I'm sorry, Frank. I'm sorry, Frank.
It wasn't you.
It was my fault he died.
Pendleton.
I'm so sorry.
I forgive you.
Officer Cunningham, do you copy? Over.
This is Cunningham. I copy. Over.
What's your 20, Cunningham? We've got half the department out looking for you. Over.
I'm okay. I'm on the shore of a lake somewhere. Afraid I can't be more specific than that. Over.
Roger. We'll send the bird and sweep the shore again. We've located everyone except for one, Pendleton Murphy. You got a 20 on Pendleton, over?
Negative. Pendleton's dead. Over.
Roger that.
You gonna be okay?
You better go.
And that, my friends, was the Silent Hill Downpour commentary. Closing us out is the, well, corn song from Silent Hill Downpour, so, yes, before we get into final thoughts, a few things to unpack here. Yeah, I really do like this ending. Like, I mean, honestly, both variants of the endings, whether it's, the Forgiveness ending, which is what this one is called, and, I can't remember what the regular good ending is called. But again, there is actually a minute difference between the two as well. Like, I mean, if you get the Forgiveness ending, as you saw just there, Anne will forgive Murphy. They'll both hug it out, and then she'll, tell the police that Murphy's dead. In the good ending, if you kill a bunch of enemies and, but still choose a lot of the, heroic choices, for the lack of a better phrase, she'll just say that she can't find Pendleton anywhere, so... Again, while she doesn't exactly, give him the kindness of starting a new life and, elsewhere in the world, she does basically grant Murphy the chance to run away and begin again, which is, again, still sweet, even if it does kind of lessen the impact a little bit. Now, yeah, in regards to a lot of things as well, a lot of your choices, and again, you know what, I think that a lot of that is something that I probably will say for the next couple of videos for the endings where it's applicable, because I can probably talk about it in greater detail there, so I guess maybe I could possibly discuss the, the characterization of Anne Cunningham, and part of why I have such a problem with it, and again, I did bring this up in the Shadow the Hedgehog commentary with, the gun commander and everything, it's that, for a majority of the game, she's an antagonistic presence towards Murphy, almost to a very cartoonish degree, actually, which is, it's a sort of characterization in writing where it's like, I hate you, you're the worst person in existence, but you wanted the story where it's very applicable. And that's what Silent Hill does, which, is fine enough if you want to create a tragic figure, but the problem is, if you want, the audience to sympathize with them, you need to show elements of redemption, which, one thing I will say compared to Shadow the Hedgehog is that Silent Hill Downpour does on the occasion. Like earlier on at the end of the mine segment where, she found Frank Coleridge's badge, and ended up breaking down a little bit, letting Murphy go. Again, I think a couple more moments like that, dashed throughout the story, probably would have helped matters a little bit more. And then again, also being pragmatic about the situation, which, the story did also, especially at the very end of the SideQuest video that was one of the previous parts, was that it didn't entirely detail that Anne was, on the level, and the Silent Hill Downpour comic does also delve into that a little bit more, but again, in order to enhance the story of Silent Hill Downpour as a game, I think that honestly should have been better written in, which, you possibly could have done, not necessarily by cutting out the co-op gameplay, which probably would have seen you controlling both Murphy and Anne, but I guess maybe having Anne as a second scenario, I guess kind of similar to how, I guess kind of similar to how you would have handled a Resident Evil scenario, where, one character does one thing, another character does another, and that's basically how you can follow through with the story, but I don't know. Something that you possibly could have followed up on. Yes, and this is the second license strike, which is quite possibly the most Nickelback Theory of a Dead Man sounding song I've ever heard in my life. I think, I can't remember what it's called. I know the track is called I'm Afraid of Storms, but I can't remember who sings it. You'll probably see it in a little bit, actually. And they say we'll need a hero to save us, yeah, yeah, we're in here, yeah. Okay, but that's enough of making fun of the music. I guess if I could probably go into final thoughts about the game itself. Silent Hill Downpour to me is a game that I honestly think was a victim of bad timing. Again, mostly because a lot of faith, especially after, titles such as Silent Hill Homecoming, and especially with, Shattered Memories and a lot of that sort of titles really sort of destroying faith in the Silent Hill brand as a whole. Again, not entirely so, and I don't think it's entirely their fault, but it's just more so with the radical way in which Konami was handling the series at the time, which I think really put Downpour in a negative position. Putting on top of that the fact that Vatra Games were actually a very new developer at the time. I mean, the only other game they made before this was, you know, Russian Attack. And, you know, after Silent Hill Downpour, which was honestly not given a fair shake of the tree in terms of budget and, you know, a lot of other things, I think it really ended up hurting the game as a whole, and, you know, combined that with the leadership of the evil Tom Hewlett and the fact that, well, the series was pretty much at death's row at this point, which is actually kind of fitting considering Silent Hill Downpour, but I don't know, it ultimately resulted in Silent Hill Downpour not only not being as good as it could have been, but ultimately being a game that had a lot of potential and a lot of ideas that I think had Vatra Games been given, you know, a second crack at the material, they honestly could have gotten pretty down pat, but again, I can completely understand why people would dismiss this as a Silent Hill game. The fact that a lot of its ideas aren't very well developed, and the fact that a lot of the horror, particularly in the main story in certain aspects, isn't as, you know, thoroughly thought out as they would have liked, or as subtle as a lot of people have pointed out. And not to mention, plus some of the sillier aspects, like, you know, police cars that drop off monsters, or the fact that the enemy design looks uninspired. Again, I can completely see why people do dismiss this game as something, you know, very middle-tier THQ garbage that, you know, was pretty much gone by this stage, but at the same time, though, Silent Hill Downpour, I think, has a lot more to offer than I think people of the time, you know, really gave it. Because, I mean, Silent Hill Downpour not only has some really cool-looking side missions, in terms of art design, it completely blows Shattered Memories and Silent Hill Homecoming and Origins completely out of the water. And, you know, story-wise, while a lot of people do think it tries to crimp on, you know, the fame of Silent Hill 2, I think it not only handles the whole revenge plot much better than Silent Hill 3 did, but in turn the whole concept of crime and punishment in a way in which Silent Hill 2 could only really dream of, because while Silent Hill 2 had a great focus on emotions and allowing the viewer to project their emotions onto the characters such as Eddie, Angela, and James, Silent Hill Homecoming had... not Silent Hill Homecoming, god, fuck no. Silent Hill Downpour had characters that felt... well, again, they felt like they had a tangible presence, not only in terms of detailing their past, you know, not just with Murphy, but with Anne, and again, just a lot of different people. Like, I mean, from Howard to DJ Ricks, again, the characters felt like they existed in a world, you know, beyond our understanding, which, again, in a lot of other cases would appear as sloppy writing, but honestly, in the way in which they just flesh things out with, you know, small little details peppered about, like, you know, Carol Pendleton's letters to Murphy, ultimately giving you a window into what her character thinks and feels, despite, you know, despite the character herself not really appearing in the game. Again, just little things that help make the game feel cohesive, and that's something you could really say about Silent Hill Downpour. While in some aspects it does feel very, you know, unpolished, it is a game that is very cohesive, which is something that I wholeheartedly appreciate, and made the whole experience feel very... it felt like a telltale sign of where Silent Hill could have gone. You know, before you just handed the reins over to Kojima, who was just like, you know what, let me use this as an excuse to hang out with my buddies Norman Reedus and Guillermo del Toro. What is Silent Hill? I don't know, I don't play horror games. I'm kind of a pussy, to be perfectly honest. A goddamn fucking pussy! Well, I mean, I say that, but then again, he did write Metal Gear Solid 2, which had a really cool horror plot without it really being a horror game. But I'm getting ahead of myself here. And, yeah, what a very... well, I mean, it's a fitting choice to end the credits on, and it is actually a pretty decent choice with a very old-timey sort of song. Who sees skies that are blue? Something, something, yes... I don't know what I'm singing anymore. But anyway, Silent Hill Downpour, where does it stack up in terms of the other Silent Hill games for me? Honestly, it is up there as one of my favourites. In fact, in terms of my ranking, it'll probably go 2, 1, Silent Hill 4, Downpour, Shattered Memories, 3, Origins, and, yeah, Homecoming. Again, you know, I mean, that's not to say that Downpour isn't without its faults, and again, I do plan on reviewing this game at some point, probably along with all the other Silent Hill games, if I ever get around to it, but again, it's a game that I wholeheartedly enjoy, and I do recommend a lot of Silent Hill fans give a second playthrough. I can't guarantee that this game is going to knock your socks off, but I think what it will do is that it will surprise you in small moments. Again, it's very unpolished, it's very rough around the edges, but it's a proof of concept and has a whole bunch of ideas that if a future Silent Hill game were to ever come out, I would like to see them take a lot from Silent Hill Downpour's philosophy in terms of fleshing out the town and a lot of its little side stories, and really make that into a whole game, you know? But again, in terms of commentaries, well, I'm going to be holding off on those for a little bit, mainly because of a lot of things in my personal life that are starting to spike up. And also because I have a little something planned for October, which, you know, I need some time to prepare for that and get a bunch of commentaries ready for the month for a very spooky, spectacular thing. However, that doesn't mean I'm going to be done for that entirely, because come spring, it's a game started once I get things prepared for that, so as for what Silent Hill game I'm tackling, I'll keep that a secret. But in terms of the game that I'm going to be commentating over next, around September, or at least around that month, I'll probably put the game on hold for, you know, October for obvious reasons. The next game I shall be covering is Kingdom Hearts Chain of Memories for the Game Boy Advance. Yes, so look forward to that one. A very contrasting game, but, you know what, I hope you look forward to it. So on that note, I am Solidus-Skully, keep it new metal, and I hope you've enjoyed the Silent Hill Downpour commentary. Catch you later, and I hope you have a good night.
Andy Williams!